One accusation shatters years of loyalty. When the Thompsons confront their trusted housekeeper, Rosa, over a suspected theft, they uncover hidden struggles and buried assumptions. Will this misunderstanding destroy everything, or reveal a bond deeper than trust? The Thompson household was filled with the quiet peace of retirement. Peter and Margaret, both in their mid-60s, enjoyed their routines in the large, comfortable home they had worked so many years to build. They were proud of the life they had created, complete with a housekeeper, Rosa, who had been with them for 5 years. Rosa was diligent, a woman of few words, always dedicated to her work. Over the years, she had come to know every detail of the Thompsons' lives, silently weaving herself into the fabric of their home. Rosa's life, however, was far from easy. She was a widow with 2 sons, balancing not only the job at the Thompsons, but also a part-time evening shift at a local grocery store. Her oldest son had recently started college on a partial scholarship. He was a diligent student, but even with the scholarship and his part-time work, covering the rest of the tuition was a constant struggle. Her younger son, who would soon turn 6, was full of energy and curiosity, and Rosa often brought him along to work when childcare fell through. Despite her hardships, Rosa carried herself with quiet pride, never once complaining to the Thompsons about her circumstances. The Thompsons' daughter, Emma, who occasionally visited, did not see Rosa the same way her parents did. She had always viewed Rosa with a degree of suspicion, considering her unpolished and even too familiar. She saw Rosa's social standing and the fact that she brought her young child to work as unprofessional and inappropriate. Emma's suspicions grew even sharper one afternoon when she observed Rosa's behavior. She noticed how, at the end of the day, Rosa would often linger in the kitchen, putting something into her bag. Emma's mind jumped to conclusions, convinced Rosa was hiding something and possibly even stealing. Emma brought up her concerns during a visit with her parents. "Mom, Dad, I think Rosa's been acting strange," she said with an accusatory tone. "I saw her slipping things in her bag last week. Don't you think that's suspicious?" Peter and Margaret brushed off her concerns, laughing. They'd known Rosa for years. She was practically family, and they trusted her implicitly. "Emma, Rosa has been nothing but honest with us." "You're overthinking it," Peter said, dismissing the idea with a wave of his hand. Emma, unsatisfied, left feeling unsettled. As she drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Meanwhile, Rosa, unaware of Emma's suspicions, continued her routine. Each day, she discreetly saved her meal, carefully wrapping it and tucking it into her bag. Rosa would only eat the couple's leftovers, and the food meant for her, she would take home for her children. Her sons depended on her, and this small act allowed her to stretch her resources a little further each day. A week later, Peter was passing by the dining room and saw Rosa quickly slip something into her bag. While he couldn't make out what it was, the action seemed secretive, and for the first time, Peter felt uneasy. That same evening, Margaret mentioned that her most valuable necklace, a cherished heirloom, was missing. Peter's mind raced, recalling what he'd seen earlier. Could Sarah have been right all along? When Rosa arrived the next morning, Peter waited for her in the foyer, his face stern. He was filled with a mixture of hurt and guilt, but he resolved to confront her. As Rosa set her bag down and prepared to begin her work, Peter's voice cut through the silence. "Rosa, there's something we need to talk about," he said, his voice low but firm. "My daughter has noticed some strange behavior. And now, Rosa, we know you've been stealing from us. I think you know what I'm getting at." Rosa's eyes widened, her mind racing. She immediately thought of the food she had been taking home, of how she had tried to be discreet. Could they have noticed? The shock of being accused left her struggling to find words. I don't understand, Mr. Thompson," she stammered, her voice trembling. "You don't need to pretend," Peter replied, his frustration evident. "The police are already on their way. I won't allow this kind of betrayal in our home." The word police echoed in her mind, a wave of fear crashing over her. Rosa had never imagined she would find herself in this position. She had only wanted to feed her children, to make the most of what little she had. Without another word, and before Peter could explain further, She grabbed her bag and fled from the house, her heart pounding in her chest. All she could think of was avoiding the shame and humiliation of being arrested in front of the family she had served loyally for years. Peter watched her go, a mixture of anger and regret boiling inside him. He didn't want to believe she was capable of stealing, yet her reaction seemed to confirm his suspicions. When the police arrived a few minutes later, Peter led them through the story as he understood it, convinced he had just narrowly avoided a deeper betrayal. It was then that Emma entered, surprised to see the police at her parents' home. "What's going on?" she asked, noticing the tension on her father's face and the strained look in her mother's eyes. Peter explained the situation to her, including Rosa's abrupt departure. Emma's expression shifted as he recounted the missing bracelet. Her pulse quickened, realization dawning on her. She looked away, guilt welling up inside. "Dad," she began, swallowing hard. "The bracelet, I borrowed it last weekend. I completely forgot to tell Mom." A stunned silence fell over the room as Peter and Margaret processed her words. The weight of the misunderstanding hit them like a blow. They had accused Rosa, a loyal employee who had served them faithfully, of a crime she hadn't committed. Shame washed over Peter as he realized the enormity of his mistake. "We have to find her," Margaret said, her voice thick with regret. "We can't let her think, we can't let her live with that kind of hurt." Peter nodded, feeling the gravity of his actions. The three of them quickly left, determined to find Rosa and make amends. As Peter, Margaret, and Emma approached the small apartment building, they saw Rosa sitting on the steps outside, clutching her worn bag. Her eyes were red and puffy, as though she'd spent hours in distress, waiting for the inevitable. When she noticed them, her face twisted with fear and shame. Before they could speak, she looked down, took a deep breath, and spoke first, her voice a mixture of sadness and guilt. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry," Rosa began, her words trembling. "I never meant to disrespect you by taking the food. I needed to bring it home for my children. It was never my intention to hide anything, but I know now that I should have asked. I'm so sorry." The Thompsons exchanged bewildered looks, momentarily stunned. This revelation caught them entirely off guard. They hadn't even known about the food. They had assumed Rosa ate the meals they provided during her workday, as they intended. Peter's initial shock softened into confusion, and he gently held up a hand. "Rosa, we didn't know," he said, his voice quiet with a mixture of surprise and regret. "We didn't confront you about the food. We thought you had taken Margaret's bracelet." Rosa's face went pale, her mouth falling open slightly. "A bracelet?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. No, I would never take something like that. I only ever took the food for my sons. I thought that was what you were upset about." Emma's heart sank further as she realized the extent of Rosa's misunderstanding. She could see how genuinely afraid Rosa had been, her dignity bruised by what she assumed was an accusation over a few scraps of food. Margaret stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Rosa's shoulder. "We had no idea you were taking the food home, Rosa. We never meant for you to feel that you couldn't have it. If you needed more for your children, we would have happily given it to you," she said softly. "We were only worried about the bracelet because, well, Emma had seen you acting a bit secretive. But it was our mistake. Emma had borrowed the bracelet herself and forgot to tell us." At this, Rosa closed her eyes, her face a mix of relief and heartbreak. She took a deep, shaky breath and finally, with quiet resolve, began to tell them her story. "My sons, they're everything to me," Rosa said, her voice steady but low. "Since my husband passed, it's just been the three of us. My older son, he's so smart and dedicated. He managed to get a scholarship for college, but it's not enough to cover everything. I work nights at the grocery store after finishing here, just to help him make ends meet. And my younger son, he's only 6, and he misses me all the time because I'm always working." Peter and Margaret listened, their hearts heavy as they began to understand the weight of Rosa's struggles. Her words revealed a life full of sacrifice, of quiet resilience, and of a love so deep that she had willingly denied herself basic comforts just to provide for her children. Rosa continued, her voice thick with emotion. I thought if I saved some of the food from here, I could make it last longer at home. I never wanted to impose or eat in your home. I felt it would be taking advantage. So, I kept it for them instead." She paused, looking away, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I know now that it was foolish to keep it a secret. I didn't want you to see me as less than trustworthy." Emma stepped forward, her eyes brimming with remorse. She struggled to find the right words, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Rosa, I'm so sorry. I judged you without knowing anything about your life, without understanding the sacrifices you were making. I saw things through my own prejudice and made assumptions, and I can't tell you how deeply I regret it." Rosa's gaze softened as she looked at Emma, a faint, forgiving smile breaking through her sadness. She gave a small nod. "Thank you, Emma. I appreciate you coming here and saying this. It's easy to misunderstand, I suppose." Peter, feeling the weight of his own guilt, shook his head. "We've wronged you, Rosa. We let our doubts take over and never stopped to ask if there was another explanation. You've been with us for so many years, and we trusted you until we didn't." The silence that followed was thick with understanding, a painful recognition of the barriers between them that had allowed mistrust to seep in. Margaret finally spoke, her voice warm and sincere. "Rosa, please let us make this right. We can't take back what we did, but we want to help. We see now how much you've done for your children. You don't have to struggle alone." Rosa looked away, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. She had never expected such words, nor such compassion. Yet, the sincerity in their voices was unmistakable. Emma took a deep breath, determination sparking in her eyes. "Rosa, where does your older son go to college?" Rosa's face lit with a glimmer of pride. "He's at State University. He worked so hard to get in, and he's doing his best with his part-time job. But it's been difficult. Every month, we wonder if we can make the payments." Emma felt a pang of empathy, her mind drifting back to her own time at State. She'd had every advantage handed to her, with no concerns about finances. A thought began forming, a way to help that felt both necessary and right. "Rosa, I graduated from State," she said gently, her voice carrying a note of determination. "I know someone who works in financial aid there. Let me see if I can get them to increase his scholarship. He deserves every chance to succeed without the constant worry." Rosa's eyes widened, her expression shifting from disbelief to overwhelming gratitude. "You would do that for him?" Emma nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I will. I owe you that and so much more." As they said their goodbyes that evening, the Thompsons left with renewed purpose. Emma spent the next several days working tirelessly to contact her friend at State University's financial aid department. She told them Rosa's story, painting a picture of the young man who had made it so far thanks to his mother's unwavering dedication and sacrifice. After days of follow-up calls, she finally received a call confirming that they had increased Rosa's son's scholarship to cover 90% of his tuition. Elated, she immediately arranged to meet Rosa at her parents' house to share the news. The next day, as Rosa dusted the living room shelves, Emma entered with a warm smile. "Rosa," she began, unable to hide her excitement, "I have good news. The university increased your son's scholarship. It now covers 90% of his tuition." Rosa's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. She looked at Emma, unable to hold back her tears of joy. "Emma, I don't know how to thank you. You've changed our lives. This means everything to us." Emma placed a comforting hand on Rosa's shoulder. "There's nothing to thank me for. It's the least I can do after everything you've done for us. And I'd like to help with your younger son, too. If it's all right with you, I could pick him up from school a few days each week and bring him here, so he can have lunch with you." Rosa looked at Emma, touched by the kindness in her voice. Her eyes softened, and she gave a grateful nod. "That would mean so much to us. I always feel like I'm missing so much of his life. Thank you, Emma." Over the next few weeks, Emma began picking up Rosa's younger son from school, bringing him to the Thompsons' home for lunch. His excitement filled the house, and Rosa found herself savoring these precious moments she had sacrificed for so long. The Thompsons, too, transformed their relationship with Rosa, embracing her as part of their family. Peter took an interest in her son's academic progress, while Margaret prepared fresh meals for Rosa, insisting she enjoy a full meal while she worked. What had started as a painful misunderstanding became an opportunity for all of them to grow closer. The Thompsons had learned the true value of compassion, and Rosa, in turn, found a place where she was seen, respected, and valued. The missing bracelet, which had once threatened to unravel everything, had instead become a catalyst for transformation. In the end, the connection between the Thompsons and Rosa grew into something more than employment. It became a shared bond of respect, kindness, and understanding. Through forgiveness, empathy, and a commitment to truly know each other, they built a new kind of family, one founded on trust and genuine appreciation for one another's lives.